Hi guys, welcome back to episode 3 of the budget Scrambler build. So last time we got the front mudguard mounted and I'm really pleased with that. Yesterday my frame loop turned up. Now I've chosen one with a kink in it because as I've got to keep it this high, I need to make the back end look like it's got a lot of wheel clearance. Bought this, it was £30. I also bought a solenoid, so we're at £40 for the total price of this Scrambler. So today I'm going to be welding this on. I'm going to try and sort out the rear mudguard and get the seat mounted as well. Okay, so one thing I do want to do before I get started with the frame loop is I'd like to move this tank down a little bit. It's only a small thing, but this gap is just a little bit too large for my liking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out this bracket here, move it down a little bit and then just re-weld it in place. I don't want it to come too low because I don't want it to be rubbing against this metal. Okay, so that's the tank lowered at the back. I welded that all in place and it's ready to go. So now what I'm looking at doing is attaching this frame loop onto here, but obviously this has got a bend in it where the seat hasn't. Now usually I would carry on this bend past the back seat, but Ellie has specified that she would like the seat to end at the end of the frame loop. So what I'm going to have to try and do is bend the back of this seat. I've not done this before, but I'm going to try and use a heat gun to bend it. Okay, so it did actually work. It didn't work as well as I hoped it would, but it has put a small bend in there. So I think what we'll do is we'll pop the frame loop on, and then after that we'll create a back bracket that will pull that plastic base into the shape of that frame loop. Okay, so next off I'm going to cut down this frame loop, probably to about there, and after that I will cut this down and mock it up using these slugs to check it's the right length before I go in and do the welding on it. Okay, so our frame loop is now on. To get it on, I've actually had to chop through this gusset here. So what I'd like to do now is rebuild that gusset using the bit of metal that came off. I'm going to reshape it so that it sort of angles up, and basically that will provide an extra little bit of strength for the frame loop, and also it will cap this off so that it doesn't get full of water and start rusting from the inside. So that's both the gussets finished up. Next off I'm going to move on to mounting the seat. Now usually what I like to do is make it so that the front slots in and then you bolt it from the back. So on this frame here, just under the tank bracket, there is actually a nice little notch cut. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill these holes out and see if I can get a couple of bolts in from underneath the foam, which could be a little bit fiddly. But after that I will make a little bracket that slides in between this notch. Then I can start making something to bolt it up the back from. Okay, well, getting those bolts in was just as hard and fiddly as I imagined it would be, but they're in now. So the next step is to cut a rectangle out of here. I'm going to drill it and mount it to the front there. After that I'll be able to bend it appropriately so that it fits in the latch on the frame. Okay, so I've got the front bracket all finished and fitted up, and it fits really snug, really neat. So next off is to make a way of mounting the rear. So before I talked about how I would need it to be pulling on the seat down so that it will bend into the shape of the frame loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to adapt these original brackets so that they take a nut that feeds from the bottom. Then I'll fabricate mounts on the frame. I'm going to do this in a similar way to the way I made up the lugs for the front mudguard. So I'm going to use the lathe and drill and tap out a couple of lugs. Okay, so that's the seat brackets done. They're not the best thing I've ever made in my life, but they will work. Next up, what I need to do is make a way of securing them onto the frame. So what I'm going to use is this scrap bit of steel. I'm going to drill it out and bolt it on, cut it to length, and then I'll weld it, and then I should have a seat securely mounted. And that's both the seat brackets welded on at the back. They might be small, but they're made of about 4mm thick steel, so they're going to be plenty strong enough. And the reason I've kept them small is so that I can easily attach the mudguard in between the brackets. In the past I've run into problems with brackets being in the way. Next up, I'm going to just do a test fit of the seat and check it sits how I want it and it's stable enough. After that, I'm going to grab the aluminium mudguard we're going to be using on the rear, and I'm going to start cleaning it up with a sander. It's got a couple of dings as well. I'm going to see if I can shape them out with a panel beating hammer, and then we'll start mocking up the mudguard and work out how we're going to mount that. So I've cleaned up the mudguard and I've just kind of mocked it up in place, resting it on a block of wood. And that's about where I want to put it, maybe a little bit shorter. But next thing to do is to make up a bracket to hold the rear mudguard. So what I'm going to use is this strip of metal. I'm going to bend it over an anvil until it's roughly the profile of the mudguard. After that, I'll drill it so that it will hold the mudguard with a couple of bolts, and I will weld it into the frame, and I'll repeat the same thing to mount it just a little bit lower down here. Okay, so I've created the bracket just here, so as you can see it goes over and then goes straight again. So what the idea here is to do is to tack that in place, and then I can bend it to where I want the final position, and then I do my final welding, and then I move on to the next bracket. Mudguard's fitted now, it's nice and sturdy. One thing I am going to have to do is cut it down slightly just down here, because at the moment it's hitting on the swing arm. But that's it for episode 3. Join us next time where I'll be making a high level exhaust and also modifying the frame. Thanks for watching.